Good morning, AP students. Welcome to the new week. We're finishing up this week by going over how to support your argument using the documents, outside evidence, and document sourcing. And just so you guys know, I would say probably half the class struggles with one or more of these elements. So make sure you guys pay attention really close this week. There are some people that struggle with some of the previous ones, contextualization or thesis. But make sure you guys really focus in on this week because these are some points that some of yins are getting sometimes, sometimes not. Today we're going to be focusing in on supporting the argument using the documents. And this is crucial because you can earn up to 3 points by just simply doing this. And a lot of people are not doing it. When you look at the rubric, what's the difference? Well, to earn a point, you just simply have to tell me what the document says. You respond to the document accurately and describing the content of at least 2 documents. You guys did that last week. You understand what the document says. The difference is now you not only are telling me what the document says, but you must use this to support your argument in response to the prompt. How do you do that? Well, you relate it back to your thesis. Your thesis consists of your main argument points. So the reason we did thesis before we did this is because you have to know what your argument is before you can use the document to support your argument. You have to establish what your argument is, then now we can use that document to support it. And now I'm going to pull up today's documents to support your argument, and let's rehash and go over the question. Number 1, using the documents. This is my practice question. Using the documents provided, evaluate the effects of various strategies implemented by governments that promoted their own state-sponsored visions of industrialization during this time period. Step 1, when you get the DBQ, you have to understand the question. What is this question telling you? It's telling me I have to analyze the effects of industrialization. I have to analyze how these governments used this industrialization to sponsor their own countries. That last part's pretty crucial. How did these governments use industrialization to sponsor and promote their own visions, their own countries? So step 1, you have to know what the question's asking. I just did that for you. You know what the question's asking. You need to be going through that same process yourself. For today's assignment, I want you guys to copy and paste in your thesis like I did here. This is a reminder of what my thesis is. This will help you drive your I'll start over again. This will help you know how to write a good support for an argument. When I'm writing the actual DBQ, I make sure that I look back to my thesis before I start a new paragraph. I look back to that thesis because that's my driving point. My thesis is state-sponsored industrialization during this period led to rapidly growing national economies, construction of large-scale infrastructure projects to unify a nation, and the generation of thousands of new jobs for workers of that country. 3 different arguments. Number 1, growing national economies. Number 2, unifying the country through these projects. And number 3, thousands of new jobs. Those are my 3 arguments. I've got the document right here. What I'd like for you guys to do is take a quick read through this document, pause my video, take a quick read through, and just so that I don't have to read it here and waste a good 10 minutes out of the video. Welcome back. You've paused the video. Yay, good for you. You know what this says? It basically talks about the United States building canals and railroads. It talks about the Erie Canal, the Pacific Railroad Act. It even mentions some rivers, steamboats, stuff like that. So there's all kinds of infrastructure projects that they talk about. These infrastructure projects is what it talks about. How do you know where to start? Well, number one, you go back up to your thesis, and which one of those three argument points does this document most relate to? Growing national economies, infrastructure projects to unite, or new jobs? I'm going to use this one right here, and I highlighted it for you guys. I'm saying that this document does this one the best. Could you argue that it talks about growing national economies? Yes, you could talk about new jobs, but I'm thinking because it's talking about the Erie Canal, it uses the actual words infrastructure projects, and it's talk about linking areas like Troy, Utica, Buffalo to another part of the country. It talks about Bloomingdale's can now ship and go anywhere in the country. That is really helping unite and unify the country, and that's relating to that argument. So that's the first step. Find out what argument point this document relates to. Second thing, and I've got the paragraph right here below. I got a couple different ones. Look at the first one. I'm going to start out with a simple topic sentence. This won't really get you a point right off the bat. If you do this enough and you do other things, this could earn you a complexity point. But just doing the topic sentence is not going to do that, but it could help. And I think a good topic sentence is going to help the reader know, okay, this is what this kid's talking about. It also helps you as the writer know, hey, this is what I'm fixing to write about. My topic sentence is basically just saying, and another effect of state-sponsored industrialization was expansion of public infrastructure projects like railroads and canals. It's nothing big. It doesn't do anything fancy. It just gives you the basics. This next paragraph, we're going to be talking about infrastructure projects, railroads, and canals. Second part, this will get you a point. It's what you did last week. I'm now describing what this document talks about. And there are some key things I want to point out that make this a good description. Number one, I have mentioned the author. If it doesn't have an author, I could have just said in document 7, but it has an author, so I'm going to refer to it. According to Charles Morris. Next, it has some specifics. Erie Canal, Pacific Railroad Act. Those are specifics that are mentioned in the document. Some other specifics that are mentioned. Farming cash crops, meat packing, and building farm equipment and stoves. It talked about that in here. Another specific, a link to key trade hubs. Areas like this are now connected to other areas like the Appalachians. It also talks about linking the West with now the East, anywhere in the country, Bloomingdale's an Eastern store. So I'm using specifics and I'm describing it, and I'm also using them for a specific reason. I'm giving you an example of an infrastructure project. I'm giving you examples of how they benefit the country. And I'm giving an example of how it is unifying. That's why I chose those specific ones. I'm not just pulling anything out of that document. I'm pulling out specifics that are going to relate to what my argument is about, which is, again, the construction of large-scale projects to unify a nation. Last part is what we're talking about today, supporting my argument with the document. First thing you want to do if you're going to write your supporting, you want to use the language. Use the language that is directly in your thesis. My thesis is right here. the construction of large-scale infrastructure projects to unify a nation. What did I use? I used the words infrastructure project. I used the word unify, and I didn't use the word nation, but I did use the word American government because that's what this document talks about. Okay? It's important that you do that so that the reader can recognize, oh, they're now going to talk about their support. Document 7 demonstrates my thesis point, and then now I'm going to describe how it did that. So that's crucial. And a poor example is down below. It doesn't do that. But this is a great example of how you do it. That's why I said 100% accurate. So kind of emulate this model. Step 1, start out with that same language from your thesis. This document shows, demonstrates, proves, whatever, that this government is using this project to unify by doing this thing. Okay, next thing. Once you've used that language, now you have to describe who's it going to unify? Why is it going, like, how are they going to get unified? Why is that even, why are they getting benefited from that? There's all kinds of questions, but the three main questions I always try to answer are who, how, why. Not necessarily in any specific order. Document 7 demonstrates American government used infrastructure projects to unify who? Consumers across the country. I know that sounds like, oh, you should just know who it's unifying. No, you have to tell me who it's unifying. It's unifying the citizens, but not just any citizens. They're consumers because they're buying these products across the country. Why is that important? Because it's granting them access to goods no matter where they lived. Okay, so why is that going to unify the country? Well, it's allowing Americans living on opposite side of the country to now purchase and receive goods from the East Coast. Again, I'm trying to answer those crucial questions of who, how, and why. Okay? Who am I talking about? Consumers. How are they benefited? How is this really helping them? They're granting access to goods. Why is that unification? It's allowing the whole country to get access to this stuff. People in the West can now get it from East Coast. People from the East Coast can now get benefited from the West Coast. You have to basically point those things out. You can't assume that me as the reader is going to make those connections for you. You have to draw those connections yourself. 3 main points one more time. You restate. You start out with a restatement from your thesis. I used a lot of the same words: unify, projects, that nation, America. And then you try to answer the questions of who, how, and why. Is this proof? How does this support my thesis? How does this prove my thesis? It's unifying who? Consumers. How? By giving them access to goods. Why is that unification? Again, I keep pointing out that word because that's kind of the key word in my thesis for that point. Why is that unification? Because it's allowing them to get access from the West Coast to the East Coast to the West Coast. This is an example from a teacher. It's a poor example, and I tell you why it's a poor example down here. So if you want to look at that, you can. You guys want to emulate this model, and so for today's assignment, all you got to do is, you don't have to do it for the entire essay, but take number 1 here and do 2 documents, right? Copy and paste in what you've already done, which is your description of those documents, and then write up your support for that in the area provided. And what I would like for you guys to do is try to color code your stuff. Try to color code a topic sentence, your description, and your support. Email those to me, and good luck.